I'm a 29-year-old guy, and this all started on a random Tuesday evening. I had just gotten home from work, exhausted, when there was a knock on the door. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I assumed it was a package, or maybe one of my neighbors. But when I opened the door, I froze. Standing there, looking more disheveled than I'd ever seen her, was Anna, my brother Alex's ex-girlfriend. I hadn't seen her in over a year, and honestly, I didn't expect to ever see her again. She wasn't alone either. She was holding a baby, bundled up in a worn-out blanket, clearly distressed. The baby looked small, too small. For a moment, I didn't know what to say. The sight of Anna with a baby in her arms was the last thing I expected. I mean, as far as I knew, Alex had been with his current girlfriend, Leah, for about a year, and there hadn't been any talk of him having a kid. I stood there in the doorway, speechless, trying to process what I was seeing. My brain scrambled, searching for something, anything to say. But nothing came out. Anna didn't waste time. She cut right to the chase, her voice shaky but determined. She needed help. There was no one else she could turn to, and this baby, she claimed, was Alex's. That hit me like a freight train. Alex's baby? It didn't add up. There was no way he had a kid, right? He would have told me, or at least someone in the family, right? I invited her in, mostly because I didn't want to stand there looking dumb any longer. Once inside, Anna sat down on the couch, cradling the baby, who still hadn't made much noise, just a soft whimper every now and then. I could see the exhaustion written all over her face. She looked like she hadn't slept in days, maybe even weeks. As soon as we sat down, she started explaining. It was like she had been holding it all in, and the second she found someone willing to listen, it all just came spilling out. She told me that after she found out she was pregnant, Alex basically vanished. He didn't want anything to do with her or the baby. She said she had tried to contact him, but he ignored her messages, her calls, everything. And now, she was desperate. I didn't know what to believe. It was hard to imagine Alex just running off like that, but then again, it wasn't completely out of character for him to avoid responsibility. Our relationship had always been rocky, mostly because he had a knack for getting himself into messy situations and then running for the hills when things got tough. But a baby? That seemed like something no one could just walk away from. Still, part of me wondered if this was some kind of misunderstanding. Alex had a new life now with Leah, and there had been no mention of a baby. Maybe Anna had the wrong idea, or maybe, just maybe, this wasn't Alex's baby after all. I asked her why she didn't go to the police or seek out legal help if she was really in such a bad spot. She sighed, explaining that she couldn't afford legal action, and honestly, she didn't know what else to do. I'll admit, I didn't want to get involved. It was all so much, too much, really. I was trying to live my own life, stay out of the usual family drama, but here it was, right on my doorstep. Anna was asking me to let her stay for the night, just one night, she promised. She had nowhere else to go, and the baby needed a safe place. The baby looked weak, almost frail, and I wasn't sure if that was normal or if something was wrong. Against my better judgment, I agreed to let her stay. But I made it clear that I needed to talk to Alex. There was no way I could help her without hearing his side of the story. So I grabbed my phone and sent Alex a text. I kept it simple. Anna's here. She says you're the father of her baby. What's going on? I figured that would get his attention. But after waiting for what felt like forever, there was nothing. No response. The silence from Alex just made things worse. As the night dragged on, I found myself torn between wanting to help Anna and being furious with Alex for leaving me in the dark. Anna's story didn't leave me feeling any better, though. She told me about how things had started falling apart between her and Alex when she told him she was pregnant. According to her, he just stopped responding to her calls one day, and she hadn't heard from him since. The baby, still quiet and resting in Anna's arms, seemed so fragile. I didn't know the first thing about babies, but I could tell something wasn't right. Anna told me she hadn't taken the baby to a doctor in a while because she didn't have the money. That was a red flag, and it worried me. The baby's well-being had to come first, no matter how complicated this whole situation was. As the night wore on, I couldn't stop thinking about all the ways this could spiral out of control. I knew Alex wasn't one to handle responsibility well, and if Anna was telling the truth, things were about to get messy. But for now, all I could do was wait for Alex to respond and hope that he'd give me some sort of explanation. By the time I finally got to bed, my head was spinning with questions. Who was telling the truth? Was the baby really Alex's? And what was I supposed to do next? None of it made sense, but I knew one thing for sure. This was just the beginning. Update 1. The next morning, reality hit me hard. I woke up to the sound of a baby crying. The realization that there was an actual baby in my apartment, one that might be my brother's, made everything feel even more overwhelming. I wasn't exactly equipped for this. I stood in the hallway for a minute, listening to the cries and wondering what to do next. When I walked into the living room, Anna was already trying to calm the baby down, rocking him gently, but it wasn't working. She looked exhausted, her eyes heavy with dark circles under them. It was clear she hadn't slept much, if at all, and honestly, neither had I. I asked her straight up why she hadn't gone to the family earlier, why she hadn't tried to get help or do something before things got this bad. She looked away, avoiding eye contact, mumbling something about being overwhelmed. It didn't make much sense to me. If the situation was so desperate, why not reach out sooner? The whole thing just didn't add up, and I was starting to feel like I was missing a big part of the story. While she was busy with the baby, I tried again to call Alex. He still wasn't answering. I sent him another text, this time more direct, demanding that he get back to me immediately. My frustration was mounting. The longer Alex stayed silent, the worse the situation got. How could he ignore something this serious? As I watched Anna struggle with the baby, it became clear that she was barely holding it together. Her hands shook as she tried to feed the baby, and when I offered to help, she almost dropped the bottle. She was completely overwhelmed. I couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't just emotionally drained, there was something deeper going on. Her mental state seemed fragile, like she was on the verge of a breakdown. I wondered how long she had been dealing with this all by herself. The baby was still crying, his tiny face turning red as he wailed. I couldn't stand around doing nothing anymore, so I told Anna we needed to get him to a doctor. She resisted at first, saying it wasn't necessary, but I wasn't taking no for an answer. I was worried about the baby's health, and honestly I needed some answers, starting with whether or not the baby was actually being taken care of. I made an appointment with a pediatrician, and Anna reluctantly agreed to go with me. It was clear that she didn't have a lot of money, and I was starting to worry about how long she planned to stay. I had no idea how I was going to support both her and a baby if this dragged on for too long. I wasn't exactly rolling in cash, and the stress of this whole situation was already taking its toll. Just as we were getting ready to leave for the appointment, the doorbell rang. My heart sank. I had a bad feeling about this. When I opened the door, I was right. Standing there was Leah, Alex's current girlfriend. She didn't waste a second before walking right past me into the living room, her eyes narrowing the second she saw Anna and the baby. Leah's first question was direct. "What's going on here?" I didn't know how to explain. I tried to tell her it wasn't what she thought, but before I could even get a full sentence out, Anna blurted out that Alex had abandoned her and the baby. That set Leah off. She immediately started defending Alex, saying there was no way this baby could be his, that this must be some kind of scam to get money out of him. The tension in the room skyrocketed. Leah's tone grew more aggressive, and she started demanding that Anna leave immediately. She even threatened to call the police or take legal action if Anna didn't get out. The whole situation was spiraling out of control fast. Anna was holding the baby close, tears streaming down her face, and Leah was practically shouting now, saying this whole thing was a lie. I stepped in, trying to calm them both down, but it was like trying to stop a train wreck in slow motion. Leah wasn't backing down, and Anna wasn't leaving. Before I knew it, Leah stormed out of the apartment, slamming the door behind her. Anna, meanwhile, was in tears, still clutching the baby. The weight of everything that had happened in the last 24 hours hit me like a ton of bricks. And just when I thought things couldn't get worse, Alex finally responded to my messages. But instead of rushing over to explain himself, his reply was cold and dismissive. He said that Anna was lying, that she was trying to manipulate everyone, and that the baby wasn't his. He refused to acknowledge the situation or come over to deal with it. He left me with more questions than answers. At that moment, I realized this wasn't going to end anytime soon. I needed to figure out a way to get to the bottom of this, whether Alex was going to help or not. I decided to give him one more chance, one more opportunity to step up and explain himself. If he didn't, I'd have to take matters into my own hands, even if that meant dragging the whole family into the mess. But deep down, I had a feeling that this was just the beginning of a much bigger problem. Update 2. After everything that had gone down with Leah storming out and Alex's cold response, I realized this whole situation was spiraling out of control. I couldn't handle it alone anymore. I needed backup, and that meant calling in my parents. As much as I dreaded the family drama this would stir up, I didn't see another way forward. So I grabbed my phone and dialed my mom. I didn't sugarcoat it. I told her everything. The baby, Anna showing up out of nowhere, Alex not responding, and Leah's meltdown. She was shocked, of course. My parents had no idea any of this was going on, and now here I was, dropping the bomb on them. After a long pause, my mom agreed to come over. She said they'd be there within the hour. Meanwhile, Anna was pacing the living room, clearly on edge. She kept glancing at the door, like she was ready to bolt at any second. I could feel her frustration growing by the minute. She was starting to talk about how no one was taking her seriously, how she was done waiting around for Alex to step up. The way she was talking worried me. I had a feeling she was about to make a rash decision, and I wasn't sure how to stop her. Then, things took a turn for the worse. The baby, who had been relatively quiet since the morning, started coughing hard. He refused to eat and his breathing sounded strained. Panic set in. Anna's eyes went wide and she looked to me, completely lost. I didn't waste any time. I grabbed the car keys and rushed them to the pediatrician's office, my heart racing the whole way. At the doctor's office, things didn't get any better. The pediatrician took one look at the baby and immediately expressed concern. There were signs of neglect, she said, nutritional deficiencies, signs that the baby hadn't been getting proper care. Anna looked devastated, but I could see her shutting down, becoming defensive. The doctor's words hung heavy in the air. Back at home, I confronted Anna. I had to ask, how had things gotten this bad? The doctor's concerns were serious and I needed answers. Anna broke down, claiming she'd been doing the best she could under impossible circumstances. She insisted she never meant for things to get this bad, but life had spiraled out of control when Alex disappeared. I believed her to an extent, but at the same time, the doctor's words stuck with me. There was no way to ignore them. I tried calling Alex again, this time from the doctor's office, but he was still as evasive as ever. He continued to deny everything, even going so far as to claim the baby might not be his. His refusal to take any responsibility was infuriating. How could he be so cold? At this point, I didn't know what to think. Was he telling the truth? Or was Anna? The whole situation felt like one giant mess, and I was stuck in the middle of it. When my parents finally arrived, things didn't go any smoother. They were horrified to hear about the baby's condition, and they immediately started pressing Anna for answers. But instead of cooperating, Anna shut down completely. She became emotional, refusing to engage with their questions. It was like watching a pressure cooker about to explode. Then came the inevitable demand for a DNA test. My parents wanted proof. Was the baby really Alex's? The suggestion only made things more tense. Anna didn't react well. She saw it as yet another betrayal, another sign that no one believed her. The atmosphere in the house was thick with stress and uncertainty. By this point, my faith in both Alex and Anna was shaken. I didn't know who to trust anymore. Alex was acting shady, avoiding the situation entirely, while Anna was clearly hiding something, or at least that's how it felt. The whole thing was a nightmare, and I had no idea how to wake up from it. Then Anna broke down. Completely. She collapsed into tears, finally admitting how much she'd been struggling. She didn't know what else to do, and she begged us for understanding. It was heartbreaking to see her like that, but at the same time, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was still more to her story, something she wasn't telling us. The suspicion gnawed at me, but I had no proof, just a gut feeling. And just when I thought things couldn't get more complicated, Alex called again. This time he was furious. He had heard about the DNA test suggestion, and he wasn't having it. He threatened legal action, saying if Anna didn't leave immediately, he'd get the courts involved. His aggression threw me off. Why was he so resistant to the idea of a DNA test if he was so sure the baby wasn't his? It felt like I was being pulled in two directions. On one side was my brother, insisting that Anna was lying, and on the other was Anna, a woman in obvious distress, claiming that Alex had abandoned her and their child. The weight of having to choose between them was crushing. As the family waited for the DNA test to be arranged, the tension in the house was unbearable. No one was talking, and when we did, it was in short, clipped sentences. The baby's cough was still concerning, but we had medicine now, and Anna was finally starting to get him to eat again. But the atmosphere, it was thick, suffocating. We were all on edge, waiting for something to break. And deep down, I knew this wasn't going to end smoothly. Update 3. A few days after the chaos of calling in my parents and the tense confrontation with Anna, the DNA results finally came in. I didn't know what to expect, but the moment the results arrived, everything seemed to stop. My parents, Anna, and I gathered in the living room, waiting for the inevitable truth to drop. The results confirmed it. The baby was Alex's. The shock was immediate. My parents were speechless. I don't think any of us really expected it to go this way, even though the signs were all there. Anna, on the other hand, looked relieved, almost triumphant. She let out a long breath like she had been holding it in for months. With the proof in hand, she didn't waste any time calling Alex out for abandoning them, and honestly, I couldn't blame her. It felt like the moment she had been waiting for. But the relief didn't last long for me. Even with the DNA test confirming the baby was Alex's, something didn't sit right. I still felt like there were pieces missing from this puzzle, things that hadn't been fully explained. Anna's story had always felt a little incomplete, and now that we had the results, I couldn't help but wonder what else was lurking beneath the surface. When I confronted Alex with the DNA results, his reaction surprised me. For a moment, he was completely silent, which was out of character for him. Then, out of nowhere, he exploded, denying that he knew anything about the baby and claiming that Anna had manipulated the entire situation. He accused her of lying to trap him, saying she had cheated on him during their relationship and that the baby wasn't his at first. According to Alex, she had only resurfaced when she ran out of options and needed someone to blame. That accusation hit hard. If Alex was telling the truth, it would mean Anna had been playing us all. But Anna wasn't having it. She fired back, denying everything Alex had thrown at her. She insisted that she had been loyal to him throughout their relationship, and it was Alex who ghosted her when she told him about the pregnancy. It was like watching a bomb go off in slow motion. My parents were clearly siding with Alex, even though they were still reeling from the DNA results. They didn't believe Anna's version of events, and were starting to close ranks around Alex, trying to protect him. Meanwhile, I was stuck in the middle, torn between my brother and the woman standing in front of me, visibly exhausted and on the verge of breaking down. Then, out of nowhere, Leah, Alex's current girlfriend, reached out to me. I didn't expect to hear from her after the way she had stormed out of my apartment, but there she was, calling me, saying she needed to talk. She was furious and hurt, but more than anything, she was confused. She admitted that she wasn't sure she believed Alex's version of events anymore. She had been piecing things together, and some of it just wasn't adding up. Leah's doubt only added to the tension. If Alex was lying to Leah, what else could he be hiding? The uncertainty was driving me crazy. And to make matters worse, Alex started talking about child support. He was convinced that Anna was only back in his life because she needed money, and that now, with the DNA results, she could legally come after him for child support. This set off another round of arguments, with Alex feeling like Anna was manipulating the situation to get money out of him. Anna confided in me later that evening, admitting she was struggling financially, but she was adamant that she never intended to force Alex into anything. She just wanted him to step up and be a father to his child. It was clear she wasn't after a quick payout. She genuinely wanted Alex to be involved in their baby's life. That's when Alex made his move. He proposed a private financial arrangement. He wanted to settle things quietly without involving the courts, offering to send money as long as Anna didn't take him to court. But Anna refused. She didn't want just money. She wanted Alex to be present, to actually step up and be part of the baby's life. I tried to mediate, to get them to talk rationally, but the tension between them was too thick. Every conversation felt like walking on eggshells. No matter what I said, the anger and hurt between them kept boiling over. And all the while, the baby's health remained a constant concern. After our visit to the pediatrician, we found out the baby had some nutritional deficiencies, likely from not being cared for properly in those early months. That added even more pressure to an already tense situation. One evening, as the stress of it all seemed to reach a peak, Anna had a full emotional breakdown. She crumbled in front of me, admitting that she felt trapped, alone, and completely overwhelmed by everything. She begged for our help, for any kind of support. It was hard to watch her go through that, knowing that this situation had pushed her to her breaking point. In a last-ditch effort to bring some sense of resolution, I gathered the whole family, Alex, Anna, my parents, for one final attempt at a rational discussion. I hoped that maybe, just maybe, we could find a way forward. But things escalated quickly. What started as a tense conversation turned into a screaming match. Accusations flew back and forth, and before I knew it, Alex stormed out of the house, slamming the door behind him. At that moment, I knew we had reached the breaking point. There were no easy answers, and I didn't know how we were going to move forward from this. Update 4. Not long after the blowout argument with Alex storming out, I got a call from Leah. She didn't sound like her usual self. There was something in her voice that made it clear she was second-guessing everything. She wanted to meet up, talk in person. When we sat down together later that day, Leah didn't waste any time. She was having serious doubts about staying with Alex. Over the past few weeks, she had started to put things together, and it wasn't painting a pretty picture. Leah told me that Alex had a history of hiding things, secrets that only seemed to come out when they couldn't be buried any longer. She hinted that this baby might not be the first secret he'd kept from her, which sent my head spinning. The more she talked, the more I realized how deep Alex's dishonesty might go. It wasn't just about the baby. Leah admitted that she wasn't sure she could trust him anymore. The lies were piling up, and she was losing track of what was real and what was another one of Alex's stories. Before I could even process everything Leah had told me, Alex showed up at my place unannounced. He was agitated, his eyes darting around like he was waiting for the next accusation to be thrown at him. Without any prompting, he launched into a tirade, insisting that Anna was lying about everything. According to him, she was manipulative, toxic, and just trying to trap him. He swore that their relationship wasn't what she made it out to be, and that she was using the baby as leverage to get him back in her life. But something about the way Alex was acting didn't sit right with me. His stories kept changing, and the more he talked, the less sense it made. I found myself questioning everything he said. His erratic behavior and constant finger-pointing felt like a smokescreen. It became harder and harder to believe he was the victim in all of this. That nagging suspicion in the back of my mind grew stronger, and I couldn't shake the feeling that Alex was hiding more than he was letting on. Things came to a head when my parents confronted Alex. They had been watching everything unfold from the sidelines, and now they couldn't stay quiet any longer. They wanted answers. Why was Alex so resistant to taking responsibility for the baby? Why was he so quick to throw accusations around but never own up to anything? The confrontation turned into a full-blown family argument, with accusations flying from every direction. Alex refused to publicly acknowledge the baby, and my parents were at their breaking point. The tension was unbearable, and I felt like we were tearing ourselves apart. Meanwhile, Anna was unraveling. Her emotional state was getting worse by the day. She started talking about leaving town again, packing up and disappearing with the baby. I knew that if she left without a support system, things would go downhill fast, and I couldn't let that happen. She was on the edge, and I didn't know how much longer she could hold on. Then, out of nowhere, Anna dropped a bombshell. In a moment of desperation, she revealed something that left me stunned. She had confided in Leah about the pregnancy before things got bad with Alex. Leah had known all along that the baby was his. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. If Leah knew the truth from the beginning, why had she stayed silent? I didn't waste any time confronting Leah. When I asked her about what Anna had said, she didn't deny it. After a bit of back and forth, Leah admitted that she had known about the baby but stayed quiet because she was scared. She was terrified that if Alex found out she knew, he would leave her. She had been trying to hold on to the relationship, even though she knew it was built on lies. The more she talked, the clearer it became that Alex had been playing both of them, keeping them at arm's length, and manipulating the situation to suit his needs. Leah was furious. She felt betrayed by Alex, and she wasn't going to let him get away with it anymore. She threatened to leave him and take legal action if he didn't step up and take responsibility for the baby. She warned him that if he didn't get his act together, she would make sure the courts knew everything. The pressure was building, and I could see that Alex was finally starting to crack under the weight of his lies. A few days later, Alex broke down. He showed up at my door again, but this time he wasn't full of anger or accusations. He looked defeated. He admitted that he had been scared and overwhelmed when Anna told him about the pregnancy. He didn't know how to handle it, so he ran. He admitted to ghosting her, to disappearing when things got tough because he wasn't ready to be a father. It wasn't an excuse, but it was the first time he had come close to telling the truth. To my surprise, despite everything, Anna showed him a surprising amount of compassion. She offered him a chance, no legal battles, no drama, just the opportunity to be in the baby's life if he was willing to commit to it. It was a gesture I didn't expect, but it spoke volumes about how much Anna wanted this to work, for the baby's sake. But my parents weren't convinced. They remained skeptical of Anna's intentions, still siding with Alex in many ways. It was clear the family was becoming more divided by the day. Meanwhile, I found myself empathizing with Anna more and more. She wasn't perfect, but she had been through hell and back, and I could see she was just trying to make things right. After days of soul-searching and pressure from all sides, Alex finally agreed to be a part of the baby's life. But of course, he made it clear that it would be on his terms. He wasn't ready to reconcile fully with Anna, but they came to a tentative co-parenting agreement. It was rocky, full of tension, but it was a start. As I watched everything unfold, I couldn't shake the feeling that this fragile peace wouldn't last. The truce was holding for now, but old wounds like these don't heal easily. I had a sinking feeling that this story was far from over. Update 5. Not long after Alex agreed to co-parent, Leah made her final decision. She called me up, her voice calm but resolute, and told me she was done. Leah couldn't stay with Alex anymore, not after everything that had happened. She didn't want to be part of the ongoing drama, and she needed to start fresh. She was moving away. It was clear that the lies, the manipulation, and Alex's inability to take responsibility had pushed her to her breaking point. Leah leaving felt like a significant shift, but it wasn't the only one. Anna had also started to rebuild her life. She moved into a small apartment provided by a local support program. The difference in her was noticeable. She was stronger now, more determined. She still carried a sadness with her, but she was visibly doing better. Her focus was on the baby, and I could tell that, despite everything, she was committed to building a stable life for herself and her child. Alex, however, wasn't handling things as well. His new role as a father was clearly making him uncomfortable. He visited the baby occasionally, but every time he came over, there was a visible awkwardness. He struggled to connect, unsure of how to interact with his child. It was almost painful to watch. The visits were brief, and though he was trying in his own way, it was clear he was still avoiding the full weight of responsibility. As things settled into this new routine, I started to notice a shift in family dynamics. My parents, who had initially been skeptical of Anna and sided with Alex, were beginning to soften their stance. They still didn't fully trust Anna, but they were trying to support Alex's attempts at fatherhood, even if those attempts were half-hearted. It was like they didn't want to push him too hard, afraid that he might disappear again if the pressure got too intense. But the more I watched everything unfold, the more I started to feel a growing sense of guilt. When Anna first showed up on my doorstep, I had hesitated. I'd been more concerned with protecting Alex and less focused on helping someone who clearly needed it. Looking back, I realized that my loyalty to my brother had clouded my judgment. I hadn't done enough to protect Anna when she was at her most vulnerable, and now, as I watched her rebuild her life on her own, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd failed her in some way. Then came the letter. It showed up in my mailbox one day, no return address, just a plain envelope with my name on it. Inside was a single sheet of paper, and what I read left me reeling. The letter claimed that Alex had another child from a previous relationship, one he had also abandoned. The details were vague, but it was enough to send me spiraling. If this was true, it meant that Alex's pattern of running away from responsibility went deeper than any of us had realized. I confronted Alex with the letter the next time I saw him. At first, he denied everything, brushing it off like it was some kind of prank, but I pressed him, refusing to let it go. Eventually, the truth came out. Alex admitted that years before he met Anna, he'd been in a relationship with another woman, and they had a child together. When the responsibility of fatherhood had loomed too large, he had done exactly what he did with Anna. He ran. He left that woman and their child behind, disappearing from their lives just as he had with Anna. I was furious. It wasn't just about the baby with Anna anymore. This was a pattern, a deeply ingrained part of who Alex was. He had been lying to all of us for years, running from his mistakes and leaving others to pick up the pieces. I felt a wave of betrayal that I couldn't shake. This was my brother, someone I thought I knew, but now I realized there was so much about him that I had never understood. His repeated abandonment of his responsibilities wasn't just a mistake, it was a choice, one that he had made over and over again. When I told Anna about the other child, she was devastated, but there was a strange sense of inevitability in her reaction. It was like she had known, deep down, that Alex wasn't the man she had hoped he'd be. She had always held out a small bit of hope that he would change, that he would rise to the occasion for their baby. But learning that he had done this before shattered any remaining illusions she had about him. Soon after, the mother of Alex's first child reached out to me. She had heard about Anna's situation through mutual connections and wanted to share her story. Her experience was eerily similar. Alex had vanished from her life, leaving her to raise their child alone, just as he had done with Anna. Hearing her story only deepened my sense of betrayal. Alex's behavior was part of a larger pattern, one that he had been repeating for years, and my family had unknowingly enabled it by always giving him the benefit of the doubt. My parents, who had defended Alex so fiercely, were left speechless when I told them about the other child. They had spent so much time trying to protect him, believing that he was just overwhelmed, but now they had to confront the fact that they had been complicit in his behavior. They were ashamed, and for the first time they started to see Alex for who he really was, someone who couldn't face his responsibilities. Faced with the weight of his past mistakes, Alex finally decided to seek professional help. He knew he had messed up badly, and while he wasn't sure if he could ever repair the damage, he was willing to try. It was a small step, but it was something. As for Anna, though she was heartbroken by the revelations, she found strength in her new support system. The local program she was part of had given her a sense of stability, and she was determined to build a better life for herself and her baby. There was still a sadness in her eyes, but it was clear that she wasn't going to let Alex's failures define her or her child's future. And in that, there was at least a glimmer of hope.